Good morning to all of our viewers and welcome back to Ashram Talks. My name is Atul Krishnadas. I'm going to be your host for today, and I'm going to be joining you also as a host in future talks. Today we have Haripriya again with us, and in the past we've been talking about the nature of life, remembering that we are not this human body, but we are an eternal soul. Today, she's going to talk a little bit more about that nature and the importance of remembering what we are, who we are. Because when we forget our own nature, we forget what is truly important here. I'm joining you from Barranquilla, Colombia. It's a beautiful coastal city. And without further ado, I have Haripriya here with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to be here. Yes, so today we're going to cover 3 verses in chapter 2. Before we begin, I'll say my prayer to my teacher, my spiritual teacher, to all of them, actually. Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So there's also a sweet thing that sometimes people say before they read a scripture. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So it's recognizing that as we read these amazing texts, that we are actually in association, in the company of the divine, in the company of the sound vibration that is real and spiritual, and in the company of God, our source. So today's first verse is chapter 2, if you want to follow along, chapter 2, verse 23. The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor can it be burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by wind. And then I'm going to go right to the next verse. We have 3 we're covering, and I'm going to read all 3. So 24, this individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble, and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, all-pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. And then text 25, chapter 2 still. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, immutable, and unchangeable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. Wow, so that's very rich. There's so much there. I'm going to just speak in general and then kind of tweak out a few things. So yes, and the author of this Bhagavad Gita as it is, who I love to quote, my mother and father's spiritual initiating teacher, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And he said, I was listening to, again, his lecture in preparation. I was listening to his lecture on these verses, and he was speaking about the repetition being needed, that to understand a subject matter, we need to hear from different angles. We need to hear it again and again. We need to understand it thoroughly. And so these verses really remind me of that these 3 verses, it seems kind of like so many different words to describe how we are eternal, how the entity that's within this body, that animates this body, the entity that I might call Haripriya, there's a soul that's continuous, whether my body is a 5-year-old body, a 10-year-old body, a 30-year-old body, a 50-year-old body, there's some constant identity. And that constant identity we're going to call the soul. And so that soul is permanent. It can't be killed. So and then in the verse he says inconceivable. So here we are. We're going to try today to have some understanding. And in some ways, it's inconceivable. It's like beyond our mind's capacity to understand really how finite we are, maybe how tiny we are, and how fixed we are, that we don't die, that we can't be killed, we can't be hurt, we can't be burned, we can't be wet, right? There's some quality to the self that is not, it's not familiar to the material realm. It's not familiar to us. Like, so what is that? What is that quality that we have, that we are? And so when Srila Prabhupada was speaking, also he spoke about how it is inconceivable that we're these tiny, tiny entities, and yet we can see like a tiny ant, right? So we can look at this material realm and try to find things that help point to that truth. So, for example, when I was younger, I remember looking at these little tiny ants, just like tiny, and you watch them and they're moving, 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 moving. And as I watched them, I tried to understand like whatever is animating that body, whatever's making that body alive is the same that's making my body alive. And maybe some of you will be like, nope, I'm not there yet. That's blowing my mind. But I somehow knew the soul was the difference between living and dead. And I've seen bodies that were dead, we'll say dead. And as I looked at a dead body, I actually thought everything's the same. Everything's the same. Everything is there. The body, the arms, the legs, the head, the face, everything is the same. So something, what's that difference in that moment when the body is from being alive to being dead? There's something that left that body. There's that consciousness that left that body. The spark, the spirit soul left that body. And even we'll say it. We'll say he left. We'll say, yeah, my father, oh, he passed away. He left. So we understand it, actually. On some level, we do understand that what animates the body is the self, the soul. And that means what animates an animal's body is the same. Because you have an ant, an animal, you can see it when it's alive or when it's gone, when the soul has left, and now it looks like just dead matter. So as I was doing that as a child, I remember thinking, so I'm that tiny? I'm that tiny. And that's just something to think about, something to meditate on. Like it brings humility. It brings a natural humility. And the word humility can be charged with like, oh, I'm trying to be humble. Oh, let me be. And sometimes people in this material realm don't even respect that quality. Like, no, let's be bold. Let's be confident. We don't have to downplay how powerful we are, right? So I want to offer a distinction. Humility versus confidence, right? They're not opposing each other. You can be humble and confident, both. So humble can be like knowing how tiny we are in relation to this entire universe, and in relation to all the stars and all the blades of grass and all the millions of animals and the millions of other humans and the planets. We understand, actually, I'm tiny. And in knowing our real identity, our real place in perspective, then humility naturally comes, that I'm not the center of the world. Humility comes that others matter. There's so many others and they all matter, and I matter. And then the confidence can still be present. You don't have to artificially put yourself down. And actually, I think I've quoted this before, but Bhakti Tirtha Swami, one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, he was also a sannyasi and an initiating guru. And he said, humility is not thinking less of oneself. It's thinking of oneself less. And I really liked that concept, that humility just means my attention isn't always on me, like, oh, I'm the center of the world. And so in this lecture that Srila Prabhupada gave, also he spoke about the material disease. He actually said that in this realm, in this world, we actually aren't knowing our real position. We're not stopping and looking at how tiny is our actual self within this huge body. Right? And that is the illusion, that we are big, that we are very important. And we are important, but we're not more important than another. And there's trillions of us, right? Beyond that. But I'll just say that to have some number. So if we're important and trillions of others are important, it puts things in perspective. And so this soul that we are, it animates the body. And I actually was curious when I heard the word, let's see, what was the word he used? that it is all pervading. I remember thinking, what does that mean? Does that mean like when the soul is in my body, it pervades my entire body? Like it pervades my hand is doing what my soul wants. And then in the purport, in the elaboration of this text, Srila Prabhupada says it animates it animates, yes, the body, but it's all pervading because there's souls everywhere. So when we look out of our window, like right now, I've got a beautiful view of a big field, and all these blades of grass, all these plants out there, they all have souls in them. The trees all have souls. The flower plants all have souls. The humans all have souls. So actually, if we can pause for a moment and really just imagine, there are millions of souls around here, around us. And if we can bring our consciousness there regularly, like walking through our day to day, we just maybe pause and pull back and think, everything I see that's alive, that's growing, that's alive, has a soul in it. So this soul is all pervading the planet that we live on, the universe. So that's something I wanted to offer. And if we, so one thing that I want to share from a personal story. I was in Italy once, and I was very sick. Actually, I had like an amoeba in my stomach. Doesn't sound very pleasant, but I was very, very sick. I lost like 20 or 30 pounds. I probably looked anorexic to most people. And I was so sick. I couldn't, I was eating, but I couldn't keep anything in my body. So when I was weak, I was really weak. Like I had no energy. And I remember it took me 30 minutes. If I had to use the restroom, I would lay in my bed and I would wake. It would take me 30 minutes to walk about 15 feet. That's how weak I was. And I remember one day laying in bed, and I wanted to get up to do something, maybe get a drink of water. And I remember lying there and thinking, okay, I want a drink of water. And I was so weak that my body didn't move. It didn't respond to my desire. And I got the opportunity to really experience a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that says we are not the doers. And I remember when I was younger, I remember asking, what does that mean? I am the doer. I lift my hand, I put it back down, I do all this work. And so I was so sick that everything slowed down. It peeled back, where I was lying there. And I remember seeing the process. So as I lied there, I remember thinking, okay, I want to get up and go to that table over there and get a drink of water. And I saw in my mind the image of my hand going. I was laying on my side, and the image of my hand just going from my side to put my hand on the bed. And I just saw the image. Nothing happened. My body didn't do it. And then a few seconds later, my body did it. And then I saw the image of my body pushing from the bed so that I could start to sit up, and nothing happened. And then my body eventually did it. And so things slowed down so much that I could see that my desire was first. The desire was first. And then the thought happened of how to do it. And then after the thought came, the body responded to that thought. And I felt it. I felt it experientially, that all I'm doing actually is desiring. Me as the soul is desiring. And the body and the material energy that I'm in, the vehicle that I'm in, is responding to my desires. And to me, that ever since then, I feel like I clearly realize that I'm not the doer, that I have this desire. I might have a desire to speak. And so then I have an idea in my mind, I have a thought, and then it comes out of my mouth, that my mouth moves, my vocal cords move. But the soul is within this body, and it's only desiring. And that's aligned with the Bhagavad Gita, with the Vedic tradition, and understanding that this body that we live in, it's like a machine. It's a machine made of matter. And to try to expand our awareness of that, to try to really understand that it's not something we can do artificially, and actually it's not something that we can intellectually just decide to understand. So the way the Vedic texts tell us to get realizations, to get actual, because there's knowledge, there's understanding, there's intellectual knowledge, and then there's a realization. There's like a knowing, a knowing. And so the way the texts help us to get that knowing, because I'm sure maybe some of you are thinking, well, I don't know what she's talking about. I don't relate to that. I don't understand that. That doesn't feel like a reality to me. And maybe some of you want it to feel like a reality. You want to know that you're not this body, because how freeing is that? How freeing is that? That I'm not limited by death, that I'm not actually impacted by old age. I'm something else. I'm something beyond this machine that I live in. So the way the Vedic texts actually share is to approach someone who knows, to approach a spiritual teacher, to approach someone who already knows this internally. And from them, from their association, their company, then you can gain that. And so even reading these books is spending time with Srila Prabhupada, is spending time with someone who knows this information. And actually, Krishna, I'll say this, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who never forgets who he is, he spoke this text. And so when we're reading this text, we're spending time with him. We're actually spending time with Krishna as we hear his words. And that will also be like being in the company of a dhira. We spoke about dhira, someone who can see, someone who has the vision, who sees, right? So Krishna we're a spark. We're tiny. We're qualitatively the same and quantitatively different, which means we're this big and Krishna is like, whoo. So, but our quality is the same. So just like there's a fire and sometimes there's a spark that falls from the fire, there's this huge fire, and that spark can get put out. It can get extinguished. It can forget who it is. It can forget its identity, I'll say. So we also can forget our identity like that. So we can get put out. We can get extinguished. Our consciousness can get extinguished by what we spend time with, because we're only a tiny little spark. We're not as powerful as the fire that's going to hold its position, the fire that's going to say, no, I'm not getting extinguished. I'm holding my awareness, my consciousness. So we, as the spark, can forget who we are by what we spend time with. If we're only spending time with material concepts and people who are living in the illusion that they are the body and that you are your body, that illusion, then we're not going to wake up. But if we're spending time with people who already are awake, who already know there's something more here, there's something more to this planet than just what meets the eye. And actually, we can even look at our own minds. Like, no one can see your mind, but you have one, right? So the mind is subtle, but we experience thought. So we know we have a mind. We don't see it. We don't see the mind. It's subtle. So the soul also is not visible to our eyes, but how do we experience it? So have you ever watched your thoughts? Have you ever stopped and said, you can do it right now. You can ask yourself, what's the next thought I'll have? Let's go ahead and do this little exercise for fun, because I like to make it a little bit experiential if I can. Close your eyes for a moment and say one sentence to yourself, and then wait and pause and really see what comes next. So the sentence you're going to say is, what will my mind think of next? Now, some of you might have had a thought very quickly. Some of you might have taken more time to have a thought. Sometimes the mind gets like, whoa, you're looking at me? And it freezes a little bit. And it's a nice practice to know how to stop the mind from its chit chat. But what I'll say is that all of you, just now, all of you, anyone who participated, experienced something. And you experienced that you were watching your mind. You were watching your thoughts. So you're not your mind. So who are you? Who was that consciousness that was watching the thoughts? That's a symptom of the soul. Consciousness is a symptom of the soul. That's a symptom of who you are. So as we, I used to say widen the gap. They used to here, I used to say, this is the mind, this is you. Here we are right here. The mind moves and we just go with it. The mind thinks this and we just assume it's true. Just roll with it. But if we can widen the gap of identification, this is my mind and this is me. And if the mind's going there, I get to choose. Do I go with it? Do I believe it? Do I agree with it? Do I assume it's correct? Or do I use my consciousness to just hear it the way I would hear a child? And maybe I become more empowered that way, because if the mind is like, let's go do this, or I want to go do this, or I really want this, then we get to watch it and listen to it. And we have some distance. We don't have to engage right away. We don't have to assume that those desires are ours, are the soul's. Because the nature of the mind is to always want more. And there's some beautiful verses in the Bhagavad Gita about the mind's desires are like rivers that are constantly flowing into the ocean. And the one that's satisfied, the soul that's satisfied, is the one that's like the ocean, that is always remains. It doesn't overflow. So it's, as these desires come into it, it remains equipoised. So that's just a little thought exercise to experience the self. You can experience yourself regularly. And if we are in the company of pure souls, a pure soul, someone who not only knows they're not the body, but knows the positive knowledge about spiritual happiness, about what makes us actually happy, what actually fulfills the soul, what feeds the soul, right? We wake up, we think we feed the body, we feed the mind. Do we feed the soul? What have you fed your soul today? Well, you're here listening to this, so this is feeding the soul. So every day we can ask ourselves that, okay, I fed my body this many times a day. I feed my mind this many times a day, whether it's reading a book or listening to an audible class, or we're feeding our mind, even socializing, right? We're feeding our emotional content, so our emotional desires, so of having connection. So how are we feeding the soul? The soul also wants connection, not just the mind. The mind wants connections with other people and relationships, but the soul deeply wants connection. And actually, it's said that in connection, there's no fear. So when we're connected to our source, when we're connected to our best friend, Krishna, who knows us, who loves us, who misses us, who wonders, when will they turn to me and talk to me again? When will they pay attention to me and our relationship? They're here in this world, roaming the planet, looking for relationships. And within our own heart, there's Paramatma, there's Super Soul, there's Krishna. And there's Krishna outside. We can speak to either one. We can speak to Paramatma, our inner guide, or we can speak to Krishna, who's in his own spiritual realm, but he can hear us because he's omnipotent and he's everywhere and he's all pervaded. So however it is, we seek connection. And are we feeding our soul? Are we feeding that ourselves, that connection? And what does that look like? It can look like just beginning a conversation or continuing one. It can look like coming honestly to God and sharing. I think I am my body. You might say exactly where you are. How in the world would I want to get to a place where I know who I am? Can you help me? That's building connection. That conversation is simple. It's a simple thing to have. And so Srila Prabhupada, one of the points I wanted to make today is that Srila Prabhupada said that Lord Chaitanya, Krishna loves us so much, he actually came to show us how to build this loving relationship. He came to model it. So he modeled it as Lord Chaitanya, who actually you can read books about. There's so many wonderful stories and pastimes. And even historians have written about Lord Chaitanya, who lived about 500 years ago in India. And he came as a bhakta. A bhakta means like a devotee, a practitioner of bhakti, of devotion. And he came and he showed what it feels like to be in love with God, what it looks like. He was madly in love with God, always singing about God and praying to God and chanting Hare Krishna on japa beads, on like the rosary beads that we chant on these 108 beads. And he was madly in love with God. and he was in ecstasy all the time. And the externals didn't matter to him. He could faint in the street, and he was feeling this love, right? So we often are just looking at the material circumstances, our externals, and we're not remembering that the soul wants to experience something completely different. The soul is hungry for love. The soul is hungry for love of God, love that is permanent, love that can't be crushed by time, can't be crushed by the body aging, changing, can't be crushed by the fluctuation of all the difficulties that come at us, the economic situations, the family situations, the career situations, all these externals. The soul is seeking something else. It's seeking a bliss, a happiness, a fulfillment, a love that's due to us turning towards ourselves in a mood of self-realization. The soul turning towards itself in an attitude of discovery, who am I? And the soul turning towards its source in a mood of love and affection, and developing our relationship, reawakening our relationship, because our relationship actually is permanent. We've just forgotten it. So when Srila Prabhupada spoke about Lord Chaitanya giving that love, he said that actually is because in our material realm here that we live in, we all have the same disease. We actually have the same misidentification with the body. And in that misidentification, we have some desires that are based on ego, some desires that are based on what we think will bring us happiness. And we want to be the master. And it's actually, the whole world is operating like this. Like I want to have 2 million followers. I want to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I want to have a family with 10 children. I want to, whatever the material desire is, whatever the concept of the mind is that will bring us happiness. If you look at it, usually it's like, I'm the boss and I'm the master, or I'm powerful and we are powerful. But that external of like, I'm the master of my life, I'm the master of what I survey, that is an illusion. That's a disease. We're not actually the masters. Our intrinsic nature is the servant. And that word servant, I like it better in Sanskrit. It's seva. And I've said this before, but it's nice to repeat. Seva. Seva means a service that is delicious, that is fun, that is enjoyable. Seva, it's nectarian. So what's our seva? Well, we look around, we're always serving. We cannot separate service from the soul. It's an intrinsic quality. We're either serving our country, serving our family, serving our dogs, our pets, serving our plants, serving the company we work for. So service is everywhere. And now if we direct that service, that propensity to serve, we direct that service correctly. I mean, what we're doing is wonderful, but if we change our consciousness, we can have the same activity, but we change our consciousness that my service is serving my source, serving the person who's given me this body, serving the person who loves me and always accepts me wherever I am, has loved me even when I was making all kinds of mistakes and making all kinds of bad choices. I'm a servant of someone who's so powerful, who's the mother, father of all of us, right? Krishna and Radharani, they're like the spiritual mother and father of us. And when we serve in that mood, then everything we do in this realm is transformed. We're no longer doing it just for the person in front of us, or for the company, or for the government, or for the country. No, now we're serving because we know who we are. We know we're a soul, and we're serving God with our actions. So it's a beautiful place. And in that place, we can be humble and know that we're tiny and we are dependent, actually. We're dependent on the body doing what we want. For example, I was dependent laying in that bed. I was dependent on my body responding to my desires. I could have been in a body that the arm doesn't work or the legs don't work. Some of us have experienced that we're in bodies that don't do what we want. So the humility is knowing that we actually are dependent and knowing that we are tiny. And then the confidence is the confidence of being connected to the most powerful entity in all the universes. That's our Father, that we're connected to that, to the wealthiest personality in the universes. We're connected to the most famous personality in the universes. We're connected to the most powerful personality, and we're loved by that personality. So let us develop our love for that personality. That will give us real satisfaction. Thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure to dive into these topics.
Thank you so much, Haripriya, for everything that you've been sharing with us. And I think there's a lot to dissect in this talk today. Several things, actually. I was noting in here that sometimes we feel that we're so busy in our day to day, like we have so many things to do, that we actually forget to do what's truly important. And it's
Mm,
wonderful that in this opportunity you are reminding us what is important and
mm,
is actually nurturing our soul, feeding it. And the way to do it is basically being around a soul that is more that feels closer to the source, that understand this knowledge better. It's not only awareness but truly understand it, and
mm.
being around that soul help us grow and nurture that relationship. And other ways to do this is also through seva, which is wonderful. I mean, I have met so many people that they have this like block with the word service because they feel like they are less when they are serving others. But
Yes.
remembering that this is actually what brings us joy, because is our own nature is something truly magical. And at the beginning of today's talk, you were mentioning that you wanted to talk to thank all of your spiritual masters. And I think that's very curious to me. And I would like to hear from you. Why do you think it's important or relevant, or in your case, why do you have more than one? How
Okay.
that happened?
Well, I have someone who gave me what's called diksha, which is like an initiating teacher, someone who takes responsibility for me and my soul. And that's Srila Bhakti Vaibhava Puri Maharaj. And he's Srila Prabhupada's godbrother, who was very dear to Prabhupada. There's actually many letters between them. And yeah, he had so much love for him. And my teacher is also Srila Prabhupada, because I grew up, my mom and dad are both took shelter. They took diksha or initiation from Srila Prabhupada. And so I grew up with this philosophy, and I owe that to Srila Prabhupada. I owe everything actually to Srila Prabhupada, because I prayed to Srila Prabhupada. I prayed to Srila Prabhupada that I needed help. I knew I needed help. And I was praying very sincerely for a very long time. And I was actually, when I was sick and in bed, it was actually Krishna's trick. He allowed me to be, I'll say, dragged to my spiritual teacher, because I had some concept of like, a Gaudiya Vaishnav, and I had some idea of like, no, I want to take shelter of someone that was under Srila Prabhupada. And so I used to be very respectful to Prabhupada's god brothers and the Gaudiya family, but I saw that as like a different tree, and I wanted to be in Prabhupada's tree under him. And so I used to pray to Prabhupada a lot, and he's alive. He's alive and well. You can talk to him, you can ask him for help, and he will come to you. There's amazing stories of where he came to people as they were leaving their body. They sat up, and they'd never met him. They just read his books and prayed to him. And there's a woman, she sat up and she said, "Prabhupada, you came." And then she left her body. So there's magic, a lot of magic in Srila Prabhupada. But so he is my spiritual teacher, and he came to me in a dream when I was actually really sick like that. He came to me in a dream, and he kind of told me I was a doer. I used to joke like I was a do. I was a type A. I was an achiever. I was always doing, and he had to slow me down. I got sick, and he slowed me down. And the people who were taking care of me were disciples of Srila Bhakti Vaibhava Puri Maharaj, and they were going to see him. And actually, I remember thinking, well, I don't really want to go, and maybe I'll just do something. And it was my friend at the time said, "You're so sick. You have no option. Just relax and be respectful." And I went, and Srila Bhaktivedanta Puri Maharaj was speaking of Lord Chaitanya, speaking of Krishna in the form of Chaitanya, and he was crying. And that's when I was like, what? What? Who is this person? I want more. And how could Prabhupada, and I understood, and I prayed to Prabhupada more, and I understood Prabhupada brought me to him. Prabhupada gave me what I wanted. I wanted someone I could fully surrender to, fully accept, fully trust, know that they are pure. They're not gonna, let's say, fall down, because it happens that someone is trying to be a teacher and then they're not, maybe they're 98% pure, which is like way more than me. It's amazing. But then maybe they have this 2% of material desires. And then they go, because everything we experience is based on desires. So I wanted someone who was 100% pure. That was just what I wanted. I wanted someone who I knew would always, I wanted someone who knew Krishna, who knew God. And I prayed like that. I prayed like that. And that's who I received. And then I took shelter also of, so his student, who is, I also believe is a pure soul, Srila Bhakti Vichar Vishnu Maharaj, gave me second, means Brahmin initiation. So there's different levels of taking shelter, right? The first one is you make some vows to chant Hare Krishna regularly daily, and then Brahmin is another level of vows. So I have those three are my primary teachers. Those three are my primary, and I have a lot of shiksha teachers. So Bhakti Vichar Vishnu Maharaj right now is also my primary shiksha teacher, because I go to him, I have questions, I ask him, and he gave me Brahmin initiation. So he's my spiritual teacher. And once I said to him, should I meditate on you or Gurudev? Because we had the same guru, Bhakti Vaibhava Puri Maharaj. And he said, Guru is one. And it really helped me understand. I was like, Guru is one. Like the person who says that, right? Who are you, my guru? You say, oh, should I be meditating on you when I say this prayer? And he is so pure. He doesn't see me as like his disciple. He said, I gave you shelter as a service to Gurudev. And I thought, wow, like that, you want to take shelter of someone who understands that Guru is one. It's coming from Nityananda Balaram. Guru is one. It is a lineage of this passing on this knowledge, and there's no ego involved. So those are my spiritual teachers. Thank you for asking. And I have many other Shiksha gurus, actually. Vaisheshika Prabhu, who's a wonderful, pure soul, Srila Prabhupada disciple, who's just so empowered and so honest and has so much authenticity and sincerity. Indradumna Maharaj is also an amazing, powerful soul and a child of Srila Prabhupada. He got the instruction, preach fearlessly, and he followed that instruction to a T. He puts on thousands of festivals with thousands of people at each one, nonstop preaching. And he's also, they're both my shiksha gurus. Like I listen to lectures and I speak to them in person sometimes. But Vishnu Maharaj comes and stays with me regularly, he introduced me to well, anyway, I won't go on and on and on, but ultimately, yes, I have many that I take shelter of, I take shelter of, and we can take shelter of anyone who's higher than us, and we can take shelter of anyone who imbibes and has realization that is deeper than ours.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's really important that we heard this story from you, because perhaps some of the viewers here may be wondering, I don't have a guru. I would like to have one. I don't know how I can get there. And you just said, we just have to pray that the appropriate guru, the proper higher soul will appear in there, will help us. And as you mentioned, the soul desires, and then the body does, and not only the body but everything, the world moves around to the desire of the soul. So if your soul truly desires to find a guru
Mm-hmm.
on the divine time, it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing this story from you is wonderful, and I think that's it. That's our time for today.
Yeah.
So, everybody, just as a reminder, if you want, you can join us every Monday at 7:30 p.m. and every Thursday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want, you can comment, like, and subscribe. And we are going to be here always to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.